Hello, my name is Yusuf. I'm going to explain the extraordinarily simple problem that happened with our housing crisis and our economy. This is not going to be technical jargon because there's nothing technical about it. And there's certainly clear information how this could have been prevented, and if not prevented, minimized to a great deal, and if it happened, how to immediately remedy it to prevent at least 50% of the economic problems that we've had. So let me reiterate. This is going to be so simple that literally, probably, I shouldn't say first grader, but a second or third grader could honestly figure it out. So basically, we had a housing boom. We had one also in the 1980s, from 85 to the end of 88, or sometime during 89, it crashed. It was a little over 3 years, or maybe 3 years. This boom started to pick up. It took 10 years after the collapse, and then it started to pick up in 1999. Now I'm referring mostly to these because I'm not that familiar with the West Coast, but we've had ups and downs throughout the country, and this one probably paralleled this last one paralleled most of the country. So from 99, started to pick up gradually, if you look at a graph. And sometime, I guess, it went through 05. It was booming in 05, maybe into 06. At some point, it leveled and then crashed. I'm not sure exactly when the crash, after we look at the graph. But needless to say, from 99 to 2006 is really like 7 years, 99. So it's a long time. It's longer than average. The average period for a boom like that is much shorter. All right, so during these booms, there's usually a lot of pent-up demand, there's low interest, a lot of psychological factors that go into it. But property really isn't going up that much. I mean, I argued this point with realtors. I was looking for a house at one point in the Northeast. During 85, I started to look, and I couldn't figure out what was happening because the property was just escalating so fast. Something is really wrong. It's got to turn around. It was my first experience to really see a property boom like that and be right in the middle of looking for it, looking for property. So in this particular case, the major point I'm going to make here is that your officials, your government officials, the people that represent you and work for you, who were involved in this, would have to know this was going to happen, period. Okay? They had to know. If they didn't know, one of two things. Either they were stupid or they really shouldn't have been in that position. Because anybody over 40 years old, 40, 45, in the financial world, or banking particularly, would know about this or have a pretty good idea because they've experienced it before. But let's go a little further. If you're a government official, you have experts at your fingertips, doctorates in economics, people that study, and you confer with them. You don't have to figure it all out yourself. You have people you can talk to and get free information. I mean, actually free for them, but not for us. Okay, so basically, it was said on the news, and I think it was CNN at one point, that the property boom was responsible for 50% of our economic growth. Now that's extraordinary. And the reason for that is because people were borrowing money on their houses and buying products with them. Now, I happen to know this stuff firsthand because I consider myself having street knowledge. I work in the financial field, and I've worked with mortgages and different types of finance. I get very close to people's financial situation by doing financial work for them. Okay? So if there was 50% of the increase or 50% of the economics, or the economic growth, or 50% of the economy, then obviously when it stops, there's going to be a problem. And plus, it's not really a real growth because the property wasn't really going up in value. So we know it's not real, and it's artificial, and it's contrived. And it was even also said that in a property boom like this, there's something called pent-up demand. People looking to buy who wouldn't ordinarily buy because they feel like they have to rush, or property is going to go up more in value, or whatever the case may be. I've seen many cases where people buy a house at one price and borrow on it 2 or 3 times over and above what they paid for it. So they were really using money that really didn't exist. In other words, buying a house for, say, $100,000, and by the time they're done with it, they're owing $200 and walking away. Okay? This is the government's fault, but it wasn't exactly. Both sides are responsible, but more the upper end of people who were taking advantage of the situation. They were making money and didn't care what happened. And the middle people always get stuck, the middle class, because the lower end, people who lost houses, as far as I'm concerned, I don't know too many people who actually lost. When you walk away from a property owing a lot more than you paid for it, I hardly consider that a loss. So I have to reevaluate that. That's another issue. So here's what is supposed to be done. And this isn't my opinion. I read this in a book written in the 1930s, high school subject self-taught, which covers all categories of high school subjects, from languages to economics to different forms of government, socialism, capitalism, etc. And in a short paragraph it says, during an economic boom, the government is supposed to raise the interest to slow it down. Okay? What our government did, I guess this time was the Bush administration, I don't know who's responsible, I'm not blaming anybody, just one specific person, I'm not blaming Bush. They kept the interest artificially low. Instead of even average, they kept bringing it down to make it boom more. Now maybe his administration wanted the crash to happen after he got out of office so it would look better. I don't know. They were just preventing the crash to happen a little bit longer, and it probably should have happened like maybe it could have slowed down like in 04 or 05 and mellowed out. So the interest kept going down instead of, not so much going down, but it was artificially low. So there it is in a nutshell. This would have been prevented. Okay? Now, another point is that as soon as it happened, at that time, the par interest rate, I say par, that was what, the standard was, the average loan you get was probably around 5 or 6% for a fixed loan. I think it was about as high as 6. Sounds high right now. But it basically, I wrote a letter to a couple politicians and banking commissions saying that, I said a few things. One is, if you didn't know this was going to happen, you should step down. And if you did know it was going to happen, you should step down. But the bottom line was, as soon as it happened, I'll give you an example too. The government should have immediately lowered the interest for these people in these subprime loans drastically. Just cut it right down, because that would have kept them in the house. Maybe indefinitely, maybe forever, maybe for a year or two more. Who knows? I don't know. No one really knows. But it certainly would have mellowed the drastic decline or the drastic crash. Here's the example I'm going to give you. I know of a particular person, actually I know quite a few people, who are paying about 9% as an average for 2 mortgages. When I say average, they had a first and a second mortgage, and maybe one was paying 8%, one was paying 12%, something like that. Or average of about 9, some even higher, 9.5, some even higher. But an average bad loan was probably paying between 9 and 10, maybe in that area. So if the par interest, let's say at that time, let's say modestly it was 6%, and Mr. Jones is paying 9%. Okay. Now, if the government would have taken that loan and done it right away, it was pretty obvious, and dropped it even a point lower, subsidized it by a point, it would have cost, on an average, I figured this out on paper, it would have cost the government maybe $2,000 to subsidize that loan for a year. Okay? So Mr. Jones, that really isn't his name, who couldn't afford this 9.5% loan, let it go. He lives in the house for 3-6 months without paying, gets foreclosed on, and now we have this piece of junk on the market. And when I say piece of junk, I'm thinking of a particular house where it was kind of trashed. I remember going in it once and saying, oh God, what a mess. So it's not like they leave it like the Taj Mahal, they leave it in shambles. And if they didn't leave it in, just live in shambles, then they made it into shambles intentionally. But the point is, when this particular person walks on that house, now it costs the government $100,000. And I say that basically adding up foreclosure fees, extra loss on property. Okay, so of course the government, say 100 middle-class people are paying $100,000. The Fannie Mae Fannie loans Freddie Mac that are backing these loans, or the bailouts or whatever the case may be, to the subprime banking companies. So 100,000 is actually modest. That's for that house, but think about it. Had this person stayed in their house another year or 2 years, 3 years, or indefinitely, what would have happened? I mean, things wouldn't have crashed, or the values wouldn't have went down as much. So it was just so simple to see, and so obvious that I can't tell you the frustration I live with every minute or every day when I hear debates on the radio or TV and politicians going back and forth. It's all nonsense. It's all BS. It's all nonsense. If they didn't know it, they're not. I mean, they're idiots. They shouldn't be in their jobs. Get rid of them immediately. That's all I can say. It's just the frustration is beyond what I can stand, really. Because let something happen and then play with it and unemployment, jobs, and all this nonsense. I mean, most of these fixes are really simple. The government just doesn't really want to do them for some. Well, they don't want to do them because they're making money. They're friends and colleagues. That's another video. We're gonna do other videos on other really simple things that we hear about in debates about cutting back on certain things and not other things, and how, again, some of the things are so simple and can be rectified so easily. But these are the people that work for us, and there's probably a good 500 that we should probably replace out of 535. I'm sure there's maybe 35. I can think of 2 or 3. And that's the way it is. I mean, that's it. It's the end of this video. Okay? Hope I gave you a little insight. Maybe I'll go into more details some other time, but I wanted to keep it relatively simple. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.